Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Friday, September 4th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. Two topics today. We start with Missouri and SEC football. The Tigers have been practicing, but their opening game is 3 weeks away against Alabama. The Big 12 and ACC will start 2 weeks earlier, and games involving other conferences that haven't delayed their fall season have already been played. The delayed start could be to Missouri's advantage. It gives new coach Eli Drinkwitz and his staff more time to work with the team and sort out the quarterback situation. Beat writer Souichi Terada and I talk about this and other topics. After a break, we switch sports and talk Sporting KC with Shaun Goodwin. He catches us up on the team that's coming off a 1-1 draw with FC Dallas, a game in which Sporting KC made some interesting lineup changes. After our conversation, you'll hear a clip from Sporting KC coach Peter Vermes. So let's get started talking Mizzou football with Souichi Terada. Souichi, how you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. Just like Mellinger tweeted yesterday, the weather's been very nice this summer, so I have no complaints.
No complaints. Michigan guy. I don't know what, I'm always curious about, your winters were harsh, your summers were mild, but this is, your first Missouri summer going into fall. I hope it's what you expect it to be or hope it to be.
Yeah, I spent...
And I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I spent a week in Columbia, actually, for a journalism boot camp, SJI, a couple years ago. So I kind of knew what I was coming into, but it's been a lot better than I expected. So once again, no complaints.
There you go. All right. Unlike Kansas State and Kansas, which are, on the eve of season opening games, right? They're 8 days away today. We're running this on Friday, September 4th. We're recording it on Wednesday, September 2nd. The full transparency alert from SportsBeat KC. But Jesse and Kellis are gearing up for their team's season opener. That is not the case with you. And in covering Mizzou, you've got to wait until September 26th. I will say it's better than waiting until whenever the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are going to play, but it's still a long haul. So just tell us how Eli Drinkwitz and the staff have had to make some adjustments to the late start to the season. I mean, the athletes have been on campus. A lot of the athletes have been on campus since mid-June, and they're not going to play until the last weekend in September.
Yeah, we've still got a few weeks here until SEC football formally kicks off. And on Tuesday, the SEC finally, first announced their kickoff time and TV details and all that kind of stuff. So Mizzou kicks off against Alabama on ESPN. So that should be fun to watch if and when it does happen. But yeah, there have been many adjustments. I mean, you really think about how they have more time than usual. They still have the 25 practices, a lot of practices for training camp. But it's spread out over, for example, 40 days compared to, I believe it's like 28 or 29 in the traditional off season. So they have more time in the sense that, they more off days and you're able to kind of, it's not necessarily the grind of training camp it usually is, but obviously with the pandemic and everything, you're still kind of dealing with the after effects of no spring football, and summer workouts are, different and unprecedented and something we've never seen before. So there are these small little factors. I think, at this point, based off of everything we've heard at a training camp, but we haven't talked to them since Saturday, last Saturday, just with the schedule and everything for availability. But, it really does sound like the offense is just going through the struggles it does, in the first 10, 15, 20 practices of training camp. And that is difficult just because, like I said, you don't have spring football, so you don't have that kind of base layer of knowledge you can go off of months ago. So at this point, it's really just working through whatever they can, and that's a lot for Mizzou. Luckily, the defense knows what it's doing, but the offense still has a lot to go through. So that's just kind of where Mizzou is at, and we'll see how that offense looks day one. It might not be as smooth as some fans are expecting.
Yeah, but you could also make the argument that the additional time is given the new coaching staff with a new starting quarterback, whoever that ends up being, just additional time to work on knowledge, timing, the types of things that that take a little while to develop. Now it's not in game action. There's no substitute for game action. And of course, Missouri's, as you mentioned, the first game is going to be against one of the nation's top teams in Alabama. So no real dress rehearsal for that game, but at least there are additional weeks to try to figure things out offensively for Missouri with a new coach, new quarterback. Why don't you take us through? I know just about every time we talk, we talk about the quarterback position. Missouri is being coy about it, and look, that's that's typical for a college team that has a quarterback, supposedly a quarterback battle. You don't want to tip your hand to the opponent. I get that, but just what you've seen, heard, what take us through the quarterback hierarchy right now.
Blair, I will be completely transparent with you. I have no clue because one, the media hasn't been able to see practice besides photographers and videographers. So, and that's really only the first few minutes. So we haven't seen these guys in practice taking reps, throwing the ball. I have not seen Shaun Robinson throw a football since my time on the Mizzou beat. So, besides a few times in fall camp, but I'm not really paying attention to that because he had a red shirt. He had to sit out last season. So, and the thing is too, like you mentioned, like Drinkwitz has said that they're not going to announce it, and two, they're definitely, behind the scenes, they're definitely telling the players don't tip anything on the quarterbacks, because whenever the wide receivers or really anybody is asked about the quarterbacks, they pretty much kind of just give a blanket statement that they look good, they bring their strengths, they're competitive, etc. So we really don't have anything. We can ask Eli about it all we want, but he's not going to tip us at either. So it really is in the dark here, and I think some fans, I've seen some mixed reactions. I think some fans want to know. I think some fans are kind of happy that Mizzou is doing this, but yeah, I mean, full transparency though, Blair, like, I can't give you a hierarchy just because we haven't seen it. We have, unlike Herbie over on the Chiefs side, I can't go to camp and get tested and see these practices. So at this point, pretty much everybody in the media, besides what we hear from coaches, is pretty much in the dark. And who knows, you can say whatever you want, behind the scenes, the media and everything too. So yeah, at this point, there's a whole lot of nothing right now.
Right. Well, Shaun Robinson, of course, has the experience, or has game experience, having been the TCU quarterback, and Connor Bazelak, of course, and Taylor Powell was Bazelak, and Powell would be the other leading candidates. And I'd be surprised if it wasn't Robinson. But again, what does it hurt Eli Drinkwitz and his staff to keep it close to the vest and have opponents, at least Alabama, have to prepare for different quarterbacks, different styles, and apparently, that's part of the gamesmanship that happens in college football. Let's talk a little bit about just the Missouri has had in the SEC we've seen some news about testing policies. I think, didn't I see the SEC is going to go to three? It's going to go 3 times a week for football players once the season begins.
Yeah, so essentially when they first released their guidelines or whatever, it was 2 times a week, and with the potential chance of a third time a week closer to game day. But the SEC kind of backtracked and said, we are going to do 3 times a week. So that's probably a lot safer for the student athletes and everything. Around the SEC, I think you're starting to see the effects of students coming back. I think last time we spoke, we touched up on that a little bit. Auburn had to shut down practices last week, and they're down, a few players when they are practicing. And then LSU had an entire positional group similar to what I believe happened at Oklahoma. For what it's worth, the most recently made available data from Mizzou was last week. So that is pretty old news in the age of COVID. But, to Mizzou's credit, they have been doing pretty well. In this case, no news is good news. And for all intents and purposes, like, Mizzou has done great. I believe the numbers last week were 5 people were in quarantine, 2 cases of COVID-19 were positive, and 3 were in social isolation just because of contact tracing and all that. So once again, that data is new. We haven't heard anything new from Mizzou in the last week, just because of, once again, the way availability came out. But it's been kind of good. But like we talked about last time, Blair, like the next week or two is still crucial, just because this is when classes have started up, and the transmission or whatever of COVID is right about now. So I think people are cautiously optimistic about kicking off in about 3 weeks now, but it very much so is, still taking it seriously, still trying to make sure kids aren't testing positive on all, and making sure they're getting ready for football.
Right, and we also know that Missouri has, um, I believe I'm right on this. They're counting counting on fans being in the stands for home at Faroe Field for games. Up to is it up to 25% capacity? Again, almost a month before the first game. We know some schools have changed their policies after making an initial announcement, but that's where we stand with Missouri right now, is it not?
Yes, up to 25, and the freezing, I guess, is up to 25%. But yeah, I think that's a good thing. I wrote a story last week saying that it's going to, season tickets will be essentially be distributed based on donor levels. So if you are, if you haven't donated, you might end up getting the short end of the stick based on supply and demand. But I think we've seen that that's not necessarily guaranteed either with a team, with a school like Kansas State, who I believe Kellis Robinette, our beat writer, reported they didn't sell out tickets, just because of people's concern and everything. So it we won't know that for a little bit from Mizzou, just because of the way they do it. It's just based off of timing. Like the highest donor level goes first, and then goes from there. So we won't know that for a little bit, but that's very much so a real possibility, just because of the pandemic and people's concerns. But yeah, I mean, if we have fans at Furrow Field, that'd be great. I think everyone's kind of itchy to hear some crowd noise, kind of like Sporting KC. But once again, we're still a few weeks out, so all those details are still getting worked out.
I'm going to be really curious to see once football season starts, and again, we'll see it begin with in other conferences, how much or to what extent crowd noise will be piped in. We've seen some of that, in baseball, and if you watch a Royals game on television, you hear some crowd noise that's being piped into the stadium, and watching the NBA, you'll hear some crowd noise, piped into the arena there in Orlando. So I wonder if colleges will follow suit and do the same thing. I'll be curious to see. One of the big advantages of being a home team is being able to disrupt a quarterback's cadence, rhythm, and everything with the home fans, and that won't be available if there's a very limited or no fans in the stands. We'll just have to see about that. So, all right, Souichi. Hey, great catching up with you, and we will do it again soon.
All right, thanks, Blair.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners: unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Okay, we're here with Shaun Goodwin, who covers Sporting Kansas City for the Star. And Shaun, first of all, I know we had some fun with this a couple of weeks ago, but let me be among those to congratulate you on your U.S. citizenship. I think it's official, and yes. I think it's pretty cool.
Yes, it's been official for exactly a week. A week and about 8 hours now. So yeah, officially U.S. citizen after 9 years.
So look, 9 years, you've done many, many American things, but is there anything that you did after officially becoming a U.S. citizen to celebrate in an American way?
No, I went straight from the ceremony to a Sporting KC press conference, as you do.
Of course you did.
Yeah, within half an hour. And I've not really done anything. I mean, it's the exact same. I guess at the end of the day, it'll hit home a bit more when I get to finally vote.
There you go.
Because, I moved here when I was 14, so I've literally never voted in an election in my life. And I'm going to be 24 by November, so that'll be cool, I guess.
That'll be very cool. Again, congratulations and welcome to the family. All right, so Sporting Kansas City, we're recording this on Thursday evening. Sporting Kansas City played last night on Wednesday at Children's Mercy, played to a 1-1 draw with FC Dallas. I guess not all 1-1 draws are alike, and those have been the last two Sporting KC outcomes. And I sense some frustration with Sporting Kansas City over the game in Colorado over the weekend. Maybe a little less so after the outcome on Wednesday. Did I misread that, or is there something to? Was it just something more positive to take from Wednesday's outcome than the weekend game?
I mean, I hate to contradict you, but I'd say it's the offers of play.
Well, that is such an American thing for you to do. Go ahead.
I know, right? The Colorado game. I mean, at the end of the day, on the road, Colorado is a tough place to play anyway, and going down a goal and tie it up, and then Gaddy Kinder gets sent off. So, to play the last 20 minutes with 10 men in Colorado, especially, as quick as they're playing games, I think they were, you can at least be somewhat pleased. But compare that to the game against Dallas, that could have been 3-4, 5-1. I mean, Dallas scored the early goal, and then that just kind of seemed to have kicked Kansas City into gear. They outshot Dallas 22-5, I believe, in the game. But only 3 of those were on target. There was 14 blocked shots. I mean, the players said it himself. They should have scored more. So I think after the Colorado game, you're like, okay, we escaped with a point. After the Dallas game, you're like, we should have won 3 or 4-1. So that's how I read it.
Gotcha. Well, and you're right about Colorado. I don't think Sporting hasn't won there in quite a while.
2014, I believe. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so, I guess the reason that I framed it the way I did was it was a different lineup for Sporting Kansas City on Wednesday, unique and young in the middle. Tell us about that and what the significance is in the short term and maybe the long term for Sporting Kansas City to go as young as it did.
Yeah, I mean, you said to yourself, they went young. I mean, you're looking at 18-year-old Buzio, 19-year-old Cameron Duke, and 22-year-old Felipe Gutierrez. I mean, I consider myself young at 23. They're all still younger than me. But, yeah, I mean, you've got several midfielders out, Ilya family issues, Kinder obviously suspended, and Felipe Gutierrez is out for the season. So yeah, I guess it was a completely homegrown centre midfield for Sporting Kansas City. I don't even know the last time that would have happened in MLS, to be honest. But no, they performed really well. I mean, they took a little bit of time to grow into the game, aside from Buzio. I mean, especially Cameron Duke and Felipe Hernandez. They're young, it's good, first starts, you're just kind of getting into things. But once they got into the groove of the game, 25, 30 minutes in, they fit right into place. And if that's the sort of players that the Kansas City Academy is churning out, also with Jalen Lindsay in defense as well, it's a bright future for Kansas City going forward for sure.
Now, Buzio is somebody we've talked about so often, and he seems to be getting better progressively this season. And of course, it's during the restart, I should say. He had I can't pick out the game. Maybe it was the first game at the restart, the tournament in Orlando, where he seemed a little out of place or out of sorts. But it just hasn't seemed that way. The goal, as you mentioned on Saturday, which was a rocket shot from distance, and I thought he, a couple of some tackles last night. I was really impressed by him. So this guy's got some upside, doesn't he?
Oh, he has some upside. I mean, the interest from Europe is warranted, but yeah, I mean, we got flashes of him last year. Of course, he played plenty of minutes, but this was going to be his breakthrough year. Honestly, the MLS is back tournament. I mean, Peter never said it. I don't think he really would unless he was playing really bad. But I think he was frustrated with how Buzio was playing. And then, as circumstances had it, Ilya was out with family issues, and Espinosa's day to day, and said all the other problems. It's now forced Buzio to play into that defensive midfield role, which he's never really done. But apparently, he's got the skill sets for it. Like I said, he's strong, great at tackling. I mean, some of his slide tackles in 50-50s last night were great. And just to top it all off, his distribution outside the midfield to the front three has been impeccable these last couple of games. So Kansas City's got a real talent on their hands. Whether they can keep him for much longer, we'll see.
Yeah, that is the question, isn't it? He's at his age and his skill level. I don't know how much longer. We'll have to see how much longer he might wear a Sporting KC uniform. Okay, so the team plays Saturday at Houston, and then they have a break in the schedule. They get a full week and a day. So September 13th, they play again at Children's Mercy against Minnesota, and then after that, silence, because we don't know the schedule after that. And we're actually, when you and I stop talking, we're going to hear Peter Vermes speak to this issue. It's got to be a little bit, in sports, you just always, you want to know, you don't know everything, but you do know your schedule. And in this case, Sporting doesn't know its schedule. What's the MLS doing? Why is there not a schedule beyond September 13? And what's the objective here for the league?
I mean, the reason why there isn't a schedule, past what we got right now is just the issue of, what happens if they start playing home markets and cases start flying, and obviously there's teams that can't play in home markets right now. Canada teams, obviously. So they were kind of releasing it as we go. What we're in now is phase 1. I think I heard they're doing 3 phases, but I've also heard and been reading that next week we should hear the schedule for the rest of the season. Whether that comes to fruition, we'll see. Hopefully, going forwards, we'll know what we're looking at until through November, though. But, Peter is showing some frustration about it. But at the end of the day, he knows everyone's in the same boat. It's not like there's disadvantages and advantages because of this. So he's just dealing with it as it comes, along with every other team in the league.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, I thought Matt Besler played well in the second half on Wednesday. He's got something pretty cool coming up. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So Matt, he announced it yesterday via Instagram, and has a little chat with him earlier. But he's partnering with Good Saints Deli. Obviously Kansas City founded, DeSoto based, and essentially, he's a Kansas City kid, and because of COVID, all these high schoolers, especially seniors, have missed out, on the high school seasons. So essentially, Besler is partnering with Good Saints for a competition where anyone can submitting athletes who's currently in the class of 2020 or 2021. What makes them a good sport KC, which is basically just good leadership, making the most out of a negative situation with COVID. And from there, Besler and Good Saints go pick 10 winners. The winners get Good Saints for a year. No one can complain about that. You get to feature in a commercial with Besler, it's being filmed later this year. It's via Zoom because of social distancing. And you get a bunch of Sporting KC swag. So, pretty good deal. But yeah, so that's what Besler is kind of doing to give back to, juniors and seniors who, would have missed out on the final year. Right.
Very cool. Well done. And Matt Besler of Blue Valley West and lifelong Kansas City, and salute him for this effort. So, okay, Shaun, great catching up with you. I appreciate you spending some time with us, and we are going to now hear from Peter Vermes.
Coach, last week after the loss against Houston, you kind of flipped the question to us to show you, asking us, show me a team that's been consistent this season and with all the start and stop. My question is, how do you combat that inconsistency, and have you seen your team kind of find consistencies, whether it's in game, in gameplay or in practice? What's the update on that?
Yeah, look, I think it's, to be honest with you, I think it's going to be very hard in this season to get consistency. The bottom line is we don't even know what our schedule looks like after the Minnesota game. And so to understand, when we start a season, we know our whole schedule. You start planning out trainings, days off, time off for the players where they can get a break and actually maybe leave town if possible to get their head clear. There's just a lot of different things that you are able to plan for over the course of a season. It hasn't been the case. We've had 3 starts. I think last week, we've had 3 starts this year. You had the start of the regular season before COVID. You had the MLS back tournament, and you had back in market. And then you had some teams that didn't even play last week. And so there's just a lot of complexity that's going on a regular basis. And I just don't think that you're going to overcome that anytime soon. And so the whole idea is to try to continue to try to prepare your team week after week. We're basically playing every 3-4 days, and it's also hard on training too, because you have to be very careful, especially with recovery, and then very little time in between. So you can't really overburden or overtax the players from a training perspective. So you're really doing inventory after each game and deciding what you're going to do that upcoming week. And planning is definitely not the is not the word of the day. It's more of being able to improvise, adapt, adjust is what you're talking about. And you're asking the players to do the same thing on a regular basis. And I say it all the time that they probably don't get enough credit from that point of view, because it's not easy. With the schedule and the way that they're having to change their routines. And look, it doesn't matter if you're playing professional soccer or you're working, for, whatever, Sprint, Hallmark, I don't care, whatever company you're working for. At the end, most people are creatures of habit and routines. And when that changes, and most people don't like change, it becomes very difficult. And so there's been a lot of change this year, and just we have to continue to be able to improvise, adapt, adjust, and try to eliminate as much of the outside noise as we possibly can.
That'll do it for today and this week on SportsBeat KC. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Souichi Terada, who covers the Mizzou Tigers, and to Shaun Goodwin, our Sporting KC beat writer. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands, and still a good one. $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes the Sports Extra that comes with the e-edition. There are more than 50 additional pages of national sports coverage today, but here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Monday with a new episode.